The courtroom froze as Mary stepped forward, her hands trembling, eyes locked on the judge. Clutched tightly against her chest was a single sealed envelope, like a secret she'd carried for far too long. Cody didn't move a muscle. Robin reached out, almost instinctively, but he stayed still. And then, before the entire world, Mary whispered, steady but cold, "You want the truth? It's in here, and it'll ruin everything." What happened next sent shockwaves through the room. The Browns' carefully built public image cracked wide open, and a DNA truth no one, not even Cody, saw coming, was suddenly on the edge of being exposed. Stay with us, because in the next 40 minutes, betrayal will surface, loyalties will crumble, and this courtroom will never look the same again. But let me ask you, who do you think struck first? Was it Cody? Robin? Or were they always in it together? It's a gray, windy morning in Flagstaff, Arizona. Inside the courthouse, the years seem to sit heavy on every wooden bench and polished marble tile. Outside, the press leans into microphones, their breath turning to mist in the chilly air. Whispers ripple through the crowd. Nobody fully understands what's coming. But inside, the weight of it is unmistakable. These aren't just bystanders anymore. They're witnesses to a war that once wore the mask of love, broadcast to millions as a story of family unity. But today, that mask cracks. Today, the Sister Wives saga isn't just on TV. It's on trial. Cody Brown hunches at the defense table like a man trying to hold on to control. But his eyes, they betray him. There's something darker there. Fear, maybe, defensiveness. He scans the room like he still commands it. But this courtroom doesn't bend to him. Beside him, Robin sits stiffly, pale and tight-lipped. Her fingers are knotted together in her lap. Knuckles white, her face reveals little, but her eyes dart around quickly, always calculating. And then there's Mary. She's physically apart from them, but it's more than distance. It's years of pain carved into something unshakable. Once the quiet first wife waiting for scraps of affection, she's now the voice that won't stay silent. That envelope in her hands is her sword and her shield. Judge Elaine Mathers, a no-nonsense woman with a presence that silences a room, steps in. Everyone rises. The whispers stop, but the tension only grows heavier. Everyone knows about the envelope. Everyone wants to know what's inside. The prosecution calls it their smoking gun. The defense insists it's a publicity stunt. But only Mary knows the truth. The allegations themselves have already stunned the public. Financial fraud, emotional manipulation, and a suspicious guardianship maneuver that may have allowed Cody and Robin to commit federal fraud for personal gain. This isn't just a fight about money. It's about power, control, deception. And in this courtroom, the line between family and enemy has worn so thin, it's already bleeding. The prosecutor begins building the case. But what holds the jury's attention isn't legal jargon. It's the icy glances between Cody and Mary. You can practically feel the animosity. Cody doesn't just want to win. He wants to silence her. But Mary? She's done being quiet. The first witness takes the stand. A financial analyst who once worked for the Browns. Calmly they explain how, over time, assets were funneled into Robin's name, leaving Mary and the other wives with empty accounts. But it wasn't just about money. There were contracts Mary never saw but that were filed in her name, meetings she was shut out of, decisions made behind her back. Robin listens, tension etched across her face, whispering frantically to Cody. He doesn't respond, just clenches his jaw. Mary meanwhile sits still, focused straight ahead. She's not here for theatrics. She's here for the long game. And as courtroom cameras zoom in on that envelope, the world outside spins itself into a frenzy. Is it DNA results? Fraud evidence? A confession letter? Nobody knows, and that mystery is its own kind of thundercloud hanging over the room. The judge acknowledges the envelope, but rules it will stay sealed until Mary takes the stand. That moment is coming fast, and everyone can feel it. The atmosphere is electric, but it's not excitement anymore. It's dread. Court breaks for lunch. Outside, protesters and fans merge into a chaotic crowd. Some shout Mary's name. Others jeer at Cody and Robin. Online, Conspiracy theories multiply like wildfire. But the real storm isn't outside. It's still sitting, quiet inside that envelope. Later that night, cameras catch Mary alone in her hotel room, the envelope resting in her lap. She speaks softly to herself, unaware she's being recorded. I could have walked away. But they wouldn't let me, she murmurs. They kept pushing, kept lying. And now they're going to know it all. She looks out the window as Arizona's wind rattles the glass. I loved him. I trusted her. I defended them. And they shattered me for it. For a moment, she's the Mary viewers remember. Wounded, alone. But then her eyes harden again. She's ready. The next morning, the courtroom is packed to the rafters. Robin's eyes are rimmed dark, from lack of sleep. Cody wears a thinner suit and a smug expression, but you can see the nervous tick in his brow. Mary enters last. Calm, slow, determined. Cameras snap like a hailstorm, but she doesn't look at Cody. She doesn't acknowledge Robin. She simply takes her seat and lays the envelope in her lap. Judge Mares announces that the envelope will be opened during Mary's testimony the next day. The defense scrambles to object, calling it irrelevant and a distraction. But the judge shuts them down. If it's relevant, it stays. The defense falls silent. Robin whispers something sharp. Cody cracks his neck like a man bracing for battle. But Mary? She doesn't even blink. She knows this is the moment everything starts to unravel. When court adjourns, the tension doesn't fade. It lingers like static in the air. Robin sits long after the gavel falls, her face like ice. Cody reaches for her arm. She jerks away. For the first time, the cracks between them show. Headlines flash across every major outlet. Mystery envelope delayed. Cody Brown's empire under attack. Mary prepares to testify. Inside the now empty courtroom, the truth seems to echo off the walls. The envelope rests in the judge's chamber, sealed, waiting. Tomorrow, when that seal breaks, someone's life will never be the same. What do you think is inside? Drop your theory in the comments. You might just be right. The courtroom hums even before the judge returns. The chill in the air isn't from the AC. It's the weight of expectation. Cody sits rigid, jaw clenched. Robin looks fragile, her pale complexion streaked with faint mascara smudges. But all eyes are on Mary. This time she walks in carrying a silence that isn't sad. It's resolute. She sets the infamous envelope on the witness stand beside her and meets the judge's gaze. The gavel falls. The room rises. Everything shifts. Judge Mares announces that Mary will soon take the stand, and the envelope will finally be opened in front of everyone. The camera zoomed in as Mary gently placed the envelope on the table. For the first time, the courtroom and the world saw the truth she had been holding so close. A hush fell, heavy and complete. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Bold letters across the top read, DNA comparison report. The courtroom took one collective breath. The prosecutor announced that the report had been verified by an independent lab. It had been handled legally. Every step of the way. Robin's face seemed to collapse. In a single moment, she looked older, smaller, like the ground beneath her had disappeared. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Cody leaned forward, squinting at the document, confused at first, but then he saw the line. Alleged father. Cody Brown, result. 0% probability of paternity. The prosecutor's hands trembled just slightly as he read it out loud. This is to verify that Mr. Cody Brown is not the biological father of the child in question. Gasps erupted. It wasn't just shock. It was betrayal made audible. Robin's hands flew to her mouth as if to hold the scream in. Cody staggered back, like someone had swung a bat straight into his chest. The room froze. Not in calm, but in stunned disbelief. Mary didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply sat there, steady as a stone. The prosecutor leaned in gently. Mary, when did you first suspect this? Mary drew a breath, her voice calm but cutting. 3 years ago. I overheard Robin on the phone with a man named David. She said something about our child. I felt sick. I didn't know who he was. But I never forgot that name. The judge tried to restore order, but it was like trying to quiet a storm. Whispers rose in every corner. Reporters scribbled furiously. Robin leaned into her attorney, shouting silently. Cody just stood there, blank, broken, like a mirror shattered beyond repair. What did you do after that? The prosecutor asked. Mary's voice grew firmer. I started watching, not obsessing, just noticing. Dates didn't add up. Stories kept changing. And then one day, I realized something strange. The baby's hospital ID tag was missing from our family memory box. Gone. That's when I started writing everything down. Her voice trembled, but not with weakness. This was years of buried suspicion finally finding air. I found a way to have everything verified legally. A friend in private investigation helped. It took time, but the results, she turned and met Cody's eyes squarely, proved what I already knew. Cody slammed his fist down on the table. The sound cracked through the courtroom like a gunshot. You're crazy, he shouted. This is crazy. The judge pounded her gavel. Mr. Brown, control yourself. But the damage was already done. He didn't look like a wronged man anymore. He looked like a man unraveling. Robin's attorney leapt up. Your Honor, we object. The child is a minor. This is a violation of privacy. The prosecutor cut in smoothly. The material was obtained legally, and no names have been revealed. Outside this courtroom, Robin's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face. She finally burst out. You don't get it. Cody knew. He always knew there was a chance. Cody's head snapped toward her, eyes blazing. What did you just say? She stumbled, backing away. I told you before we got married. There was always a possibility. You said it didn't matter. She pleaded. I said a lot of things. Cody roared back. But that child carries my name. Robin collapsed into her chair, sobbing openly. But the room didn't soften. Sympathy had run dry. The jury sat stiff, their faces set. One woman covered her mouth in shock. A man scribbled something in his notebook with angry strokes. This wasn't just a paternity revelation. This was betrayal dressed up as a family secret. Mary spoke again, this time her voice steady but full of weight. I never wanted to hurt that child. This isn't about them. It's about the lies we've all lived under. And once I learned the truth, I had to ask myself, how many other lies have I been living with? She paused. That's when I discovered the marriage record. The room snapped to silence again. Even the reporters froze. What record? The prosecutor asked. Robin's first marriage. Mary answered. It wasn't some spiritual union like she told us. It was a legal marriage. To David. And it lasted longer than she ever admitted. Cody went pale. Robin's face crumpled. You're lying, Robin whispered. Mary calmly reached into her folder. She pulled out a copy of the marriage certificate. It's public record. And the dates line up exactly with the time she told Cody she was single. The prosecutor stood taller. Your Honor, we request time to review this document. But based on its significance, we also request that Robin Brown be called to the stand. The judge nodded slowly. Request granted. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. Court adjourned. The gavel came down with a crack. Robin sat frozen, hands covering her face, gasping for air. Cody stormed out in silence. Mary didn't rush. She stood slowly, clutching her papers. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from the truth. She was standing in it. Outside, chaos erupted. Live streams lit up. Twitter exploded. Headlines blared. Robin's child, not Cody's. Secret marriage exposed. Mary Brown brings down the house. But back in her quiet hotel room, Mary sat alone, calm. Another envelope lay on her table, unopened. She looked at it like an old friend. Tomorrow, she whispered, they'll see what else I found. And just when the courtroom thought they'd heard the worst, the next revelation would be even bigger. Who do you believe? Cody, the victim, or Cody, the man who always knew? Comment below. By the next morning, the courthouse was buzzing. The shock of the DNA results hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown teeth. This was no longer a family story. It was national obsession. Cody arrived first. Jaw locked tight, dark glasses hiding everything he didn't want to show. Protesters shouted from behind barricades. Mary deserved better. Justice for the forgotten wives. Robin followed, hidden behind oversized sunglasses. But the tide of public sympathy had turned. Her carefully worded statement from the night before, pleading for privacy, asking the world not to judge a mother for her past, hadn't softened anyone. Mary walked in last. No sunglasses. No excuses. Just quiet certainty. She wasn't here for peace. She was here for accountability. Robin was called to the stand. Her hands trembled as she placed them on the Bible. Her voice cracked as she swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor moved toward her slowly, deliberately, like a hunter who already knows where the trap is. "Mrs. Brown," he began, then paused. "Or should I say, Mrs. Sullivan?" Robin flinched. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. The prosecutor lifted a single document. "This is a marriage certificate. 2008. Robin Alice Sullivan, legally married to David R. Sullivan, in Helena, Montana. Not a spiritual union, a legal one. Do you deny this?" Her face flushed crimson. That was a mistake. I didn't want. But you were still married to him when you began dating Mr. Brown, weren't you?" She froze. The courtroom held its breath. "I was divorced," Robin finally whispered, so softly it barely reached the microphones. But the prosecutor wasn't letting it slide. "No, you weren't. You said you were divorced. You signed contracts. You stood before TLC and the Browns, claiming to be a single mother. But legally you were still married. And you didn't tell Mr. Brown the truth until after your so-called spiritual wedding, did you?" Robin's lips moved, but no sound came out. Then faintly, "Yes." And just like that, the carefully polished image she'd carried for years cracked. Right there in front of the world. What seeped through wasn't innocence. It was deception. Cody's mouth opened slightly. No one could quite tell what was running through his mind. Shock, calculation, or the slow tallying of consequences. But for the first time, his eyes on Robin weren't soft or protective. They were uncertain, almost betrayed. Mary, meanwhile, didn't flinch. She had lived with this truth long before the cameras and the crowd caught up. The prosecutor walked the jury through a tidy timeline, overlapping legal and spiritual marriages, emails, receipts, sworn statements. "When did you actually divorce Mr. Sullivan?" 2010, Robin muttered. "So for nearly 2 years. The prosecutor continued. "You were married to another man while presenting yourself to this family, and to America, as Cody Brown's devoted wife." Tears came fast. "I didn't want to lose him," she cried. "I was afraid he wouldn't take me if he found out. So instead," the prosecutor cut in sharply, "you lied. You forged documents. You gave false testimony to a television network, your co-wives, and to Cody Brown himself." Robin collapsed to the floor, hands over her face. The judge called for order, but didn't stop the flow. She could tell, this wasn't cruelty. This was long overdue reckoning. Cody sat rigid, as if the very ground beneath him had turned to sand. Then came the financial questions. "You and Mr. Brown formed an LLC 2 years before the legal marriage. Mary, Janelle, and Christine weren't part of it. Yet family money was channeled through that company. Why?" Robin shook her head. "Cody told me it was simpler. For taxes. He said it was his idea." Mary leaned forward slightly. She had waited years for that question. Sometimes the deepest betrayals aren't shouted. They're signed quietly in ink. "Mrs. Brown." The prosecutor pressed, "Did you sign a contract to place 80% of TLC's appearance money into that LLC, cutting Mary Brown out?" Robin stumbled over her words. "Cody," he said, "it would help us get housing approval. That the other wives could still get what they needed through him. He handled everything. He always did." And there it was. The first fracture in her loyalty. Cody whipped around. "Don't you dare," he growled. "Don't you dare put this on me." But the shift in the room had already happened. The jury leaned in. The public leaned closer. The tide was turning. Then the final question hit like a hammer. "The child mentioned in yesterday's paternity test was David Sullivan, your former husband, the father of that child." The silence was thick. Then, barely above a whisper, Robin said, "Yes." The word fell like a stone in still water, rippling through the courtroom, into TV broadcasts, into living rooms across America. Mary didn't gloat. She sat steady, unshaken. This wasn't revenge. This was truth. When the court recessed, Cody exploded in the hallway. He ranted at reporters, pointing fingers at Mary, the legal system, the media. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted. But no one was listening. The narrative he'd spun for years was unraveling. Under oath, Robin slipped out a side entrance, away from the cameras she'd once courted so eagerly. Mary stood quietly with producers. "He always thought I'd stay silent," she said softly. "That I'd protect him even when he wouldn't protect me. But some betrayals are too deep to bury." Back at her hotel, Mary opened a drawer. Inside was a folder marked Confidential Correspondence. She flipped through printed emails, bank statements, and a notarized letter signed 5 years earlier by a woman named Mindy Sullivan. The subject line? Robin's hidden identity. Mary stared for a long moment, then picked up the phone. "I'm ready to submit the next exhibit," she said. "And this one's going to hurt." Just when it seemed Robin's lies had been fully laid bare, another secret was about to surface. But what did Mindy Sullivan know? And why did she go to Mary? When the court reconvened, the room was charged with a quiet tension, the kind you can almost hear humming. Reporters lined the walls. Spectators leaned forward, waiting for the next detonation. Cody sat alone now, no Robin at his side. His jaw was set, his eyes darting around, like a man cornered. Gone was the confident patriarch. What remained was a man exposed, stripped of control. Then the doors opened. But it wasn't Robin, it was Christine and Janelle. Gasps rippled through the room as the two women walked in together, heads high, clutching slim black folders. They didn't look at Cody. They didn't have to. Their presence alone said everything. Christine stepped forward as the judge called her to testify. Cameras flashed. Her gaze met Cody's, not bitter, but firm, unshakable. The prosecutor's voice softened. "Miss Brown, what made you decide to testify today?" Christine straightened. "I stayed quiet for years. I thought it was loyalty. It was fear. Mary showed me courage. I've realized silence only protects abusers, and I won't do that anymore." Cody shifted in his chair. The word abuser hung in the air like smoke. "What do you mean by that?" the prosecutor asked gently. "He emotionally isolated us," Christine said, her voice steady. "Especially Mary. He manipulated Robin into feeling special, but she was just another piece on his board. The real betrayal wasn't about love. It was about money, contracts, and secrets." She opened her folder, pulling out copies of emails, financial records, and letters. "Robin sent these to what she thought was a family lawyer's P.O. box. But it was mine." "Letters?" the prosecutor asked. Christine nodded. "Love letters. To David. The same David Mary spoke of. She wrote to him even after her spiritual wedding to Cody. In one letter she called their child our miracle." A sharp murmur swept the courtroom. Cody's lips moved as he whispered urgently to his attorney. But no objection came. Christine began to read. The letters were intimate, romantic, and devastatingly clear. "I miss our nights," one line said. "Sometimes I look at him and see your eyes." The room went silent, the kind of silence that doesn't just happen, it lands. And with that, the last layer of Robin's carefully constructed image began to crumble in full view of the nation. The letter was dated just 6 months after Robin's wedding to Cody. The words on the page were sharp enough to cut through the air in that courtroom. "Once this TV thing blows over, I'll figure out a way for us to get together again. Cody's playing his part, but we both know who I really belong to." A collective gasp rose through the gallery. Even the court stenographer paused, her fingers hovering in midair. The prosecutor turned slowly toward Christine. "Are you saying Robin remained in contact with a romantic partner after marrying Mr. Brown?" Christine didn't blink. "Yes. And based on the dates, she was already pregnant." The prosecutor glanced at the judge. "Your Honor, we request permission to enter these letters into evidence." The judge's face was calm but firm. "Granted." Christine stepped down from the witness stand. As she passed Mary, she placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a small gesture, but packed with meaning. It wasn't performance. It was solidarity. Sisterhood reborn, not in sweetness, but in fire. Then it was Janelle's turn. Her testimony was calm, even cold in places. She spoke of shared bank accounts that mysteriously ran dry, of being slowly cut out of family financial decisions. The moment Robin entered the picture, Janelle said, her voice steady but edged. Everything changed. We weren't a family anymore. We were a front, and Mary Edenberry sensed it first. She handed over documentation, records of TLC deposits into a joint account, an account where only Robin held the key. Cody blanched. His usual bravado flickered. Your Honor, Janelle continued. There was an understanding, at least a verbal one, that all the wives would be treated equally. But we were lied to. We were silenced. I defended Cody for years. But not anymore. That was the breaking point. Cody shot up from his chair, rage overtaking restraint. You all made your own choices, he bellowed. You quit! You didn't want to be part of this family. The judge slammed her gavel like thunder. Mr. Brown, sit down. One more outburst and you'll be removed. But the damage was done. Whatever image of control Cody had left melted away in front of everyone. He didn't look like the patriarch from TV anymore. He looked like a man unraveling. Robin entered minutes later, escorted by her attorney. Her face was flushed, streaked with tears. When her eyes met Christine and Janelle, she looked almost haunted, as if their presence alone dragged old ghosts into the light. She reluctantly took the stand. This time her tears drew no sympathy. Mrs. Brown, the prosecutor asked, did you write these letters? A long pause. Then yes. Were you still in love with David Sullivan while married to Cody? I don't know, Robin said softly. It was complicated. I thought I could move on. Did Cody know? Eventually she whispered. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Cody shot to his feet again. What are you saying? He barked. You told me he was gone. Robin's dam finally broke. You knew, she cried, sobbing. You always knew. You said it was fine as long as we maintained the ratings. The entire room seemed to suck in air at once. Those 4 words, as long as we maintained the ratings, would soon ricochet across the nation. Replayed, clipped, shared, dissected. A marriage wasn't just crumbling. A public image was detonating. The prosecutor didn't even need to add drama. He simply turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to submit one final exhibit for today. From a worn leather briefcase, he produced a small journal. This notebook, provided by Christine Brown, belonged to Robin. Inside are detailed notes, plans between her and Cody to keep TLC income funneled under Robin's control. There's even a section describing how to quietly edge Mary out and keep the other wives distracted. The judge flipped through the journal slowly, her expression unreadable. But one particular page made her pause, just slightly. She closed it with a soft thud. We will recess until tomorrow morning. Court will reconvene at 8:30 sharp. Counsel, prepare for full cross-examinations. As the gavel came down, Robin collapsed into quiet, messy tears. Christine and Janelle walked tall, shoulders squared. Cody sat like a statue, caught somewhere between fury and disbelief. And Mary didn't move. She didn't need to. She had crossed her breaking point long ago. Now there was only a strange, quiet calm in her eyes. The kind that comes not from revenge, but from finally being done. Outside, the crowd had swelled. Protesters shouted, reporters jostled, cameras flashed. Online, the hashtag #expose. The Browns was already trending worldwide. But inside Mary's heart, something shifted. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't vengeance. It was peace. Then, just when it felt like the worst was over, Robin leaned toward her lawyer, her voice barely audible. There's one more document, she whispered. If they show it, it's over. The final day of the trial began with a quiet no one trusted. The gallery was packed to the rafters, yet the air itself felt still, like the moment right before a storm hits. Helicopters hovered above the courthouse, like watchful birds, their rotors slicing through the chilly morning air. Every major news network had cameras on every corner. Inside, Mary sat quietly at her seat, hands gently folded, her face calm. This wasn't the stillness of defeat. It was the quiet of a woman who had already claimed something more meaningful than any verdict. Her truth. Christine and Janelle entered a few minutes later, side by side with a single heavy binder clutched between them. The prosecution called them forward for final testimony. The courtroom collectively leaned in, tense as glass just before it shatters. Christine took the stand first, steady as ever. We have one last piece of evidence, she said, lifting the binder. Financial records. Account transfers. Internal emails that show Cody and Robin set up an off-the-books trust. Money secretly funneled out of family accounts into an account under the name of Robin's sister Jessica Sullivan. The courtroom erupted. The judge slammed her gavel over and over, calling for order, but even she couldn't dampen the shock that swept through the room. Cody leaned forward, snapping, "You're lying." Christine opened the binder and held up the proof. A wire transfer of $160,000, labeled as Family PR Services. But the account holder, she added evenly, is Jessica Sullivan. And then she revealed the attached email, Cody to Robin. "If we keep it in Jess's name, nobody will trace it back. We can tell them it's for production costs. Mary won't ask. She's too loyal." The sound that followed wasn't just gasps. It was betrayal hitting the air like a hammer. Cody shot to his feet again, face flushed. "That's out of context." The judge didn't even flinch. "Mr. Brown, sit down. One more tirade and you'll be held in contempt." Cody sank back down, cheeks burning. The carefully crafted image of the charming patriarch collapsing right there in front of the cameras. Robin turned her face away, tears streaking down her cheeks, but they no longer moved the room. People had seen those tears before. Now they saw them for what they were, tools. Janelle stepped up next. She testified about how she and Christine were locked out of financial accounts without warning. "He promised transparency," she said, her voice firm. "He delivered secrecy." Then she turned to Cody directly. "You made me question my own judgment for years. Every time we doubted you, you told us we were selfish. But Mary saw the truth before any of us, and we let her down." Mary's lip trembled slightly, but she didn't break. After years of being made to feel small, this was the moment she'd been waiting for, not revenge, but validation. She wasn't crazy. She'd just been surrounded by people too scared to admit she was right. The prosecution then unveiled Robin's final secret, a $50,000 wire transfer to Jessica Sullivan, days before the DNA results were released. Robin was called back to the stand. "Mrs. Brown," the prosecutor asked, "did you make this transfer from your personal account to Jessica Sullivan?" Robin swallowed hard. "Yes." "Why?" Because she knew," Robin whispered. "She knew about David, about the letters, about everything. I just wanted her to leave it alone." "So you paid her hush money." "I never called it that," Robin said weakly. "But that's what it was." Her silence said everything words could not. The prosecution rested. Every eye in that courtroom turned to the judge. But before she could speak, Cody bolted from his chair and strode to the center of the room. "You want a confession?" he shouted. "Fine. You want the truth? Here it is." The gallery held its breath. "The show changed everything," he roared. "I was just trying to hold it all together. The family, the money, the image. That's all it ever was. An image. Robin was part of it. So were the other wives. But none of them played their roles right. They fell apart." He jabbed a finger at Mary. "You were never content. You chased what you already had and threw it away." "Mr. Brown, return to your seat," the judge ordered sharply. "You think I'm the bad guy?" Cody spat. "This whole thing was a circus, and I was the ringmaster." "Sure, but they all danced for me." Two bailiffs approached. "You want to ruin me? Fine, you have," he said bitterly. "But don't pretend you're innocent." They escorted him out. He didn't fight, but just before leaving he looked back. Not at the judge, not at Robin, but at Mary. She didn't flinch. Robin sat slumped in her chair, her crying now loud and messy. Mascara ran down her cheeks like ink on wet paper. But no one moved to comfort her. Sympathy had run dry. The courtroom felt different now. Lighter. Not healed, but no longer poisoned. Then, Mary was called forward for her final statement. She rose slowly, crossed to the stand, and faced the room with quiet strength. "For years," she began, her voice trembling, "I kept my mouth shut. I thought silence was strength, that by not resisting, I was doing the right thing. But silence only served them. It protected his lies. It enabled her manipulation. It allowed a family to rot behind a pretty picture." She turned slightly, looking at the jury. "I don't want revenge. I want clarity. I want people to stop romanticizing dysfunction, to stop confusing control with love. What they did, it wasn't love, it was theater. And I was cast as the background character, in a story I helped create." She paused, her voice gaining weight. "But not anymore. Because when a woman stops waiting to be rescued, She becomes the flame instead of the damsel. Mary then presented one last envelope. Inside, a notarized statement from a TLC producer. It confirmed that Robin and Cody had negotiated a spin-off behind everyone's back. Time to launch right after Mary's planned exit from the family. It was always about them, Mary said quietly. Always. The judge called for recess and stepped out to deliberate. Outside, the media frenzy was a storm. Reporters shouted, cameras flashed, hashtags trended faster than they could be counted. Inside the courtroom it was still. And then Robin leaned toward her lawyer, unaware her mic was still hot. Her voice was hoarse but steady. If they open the vault, she whispered, I'm not going down alone. Through her tears, she smiled, a small chilling smile. And just like that, everyone in that courtroom realized this wasn't the end of the war. It had simply changed hands. What could be inside? Robin's vault. Who else might fall when the next truth drops? Comment below. What do you think she's hiding? And who might be next?